Welcome back to a collection of main things. Today we are going to look at the life of David and see a lesson that we can learn there from him. I love the life of David. It's very real. It's recorded for us, highs and lows, weaknesses and strengths, and it's just a real encouragement to me that this man, with all his flaws, was still somebody who had the title, a man after God's own heart. So let's get into the life of David. Do you find truth addictive? Because I do. But unfortunately though, I find that in my search for truth, many people, when I'm talking to them and trying to find truth, sometimes if they don't know the answer for something, they will fudge it, or they will, fake it till you make it, or they will make up an answer, instead of just simply saying, I don't know. And since arriving back in New Zealand from Cambodia, I've been asked so many questions that I don't know the answer to. And I'm finding that my answers are always the same, no matter what the question is. Things like, when are you going back to Cambodia? I don't know. They'll say, what's the real situation of COVID in Cambodia? I don't know. Is the process for you to get back to Cambodia, is it safe and secure? I don't know. Do you think they'll lift some of the restrictions soon? I don't know. Has the New Zealand government made the right decision, to go into total lockdown? I don't know. Should they have kept some of the businesses going during this time? I don't know. Do you feel it was the right decision for you to come back to New Zealand? And honestly, I don't know. It's quite fun now, actually. I'm quite enjoying it, because when people ask me questions like that, I don't even have to think about what might be the right answer, what do they want to hear. My default answer is, I don't know. So it's become quite fun. It's COVID-19 and nobody clearly knows what to do. Questions are everywhere. What do we do? Do we go back to our passport countries? Do we stay put? Do we keep services open? Do we shut everything down? What do we do? And in the story of David, it's found in 1st and 2nd Samuel. There's a lot of the Bible that's devoted to his story. But I've discovered an interesting pattern. I love patterns. I've discovered an interesting pattern in David's life. It's challenged me. David comes across a lot of situations where he doesn't know what to do. And at those times, it tells us David inquired of the Lord. When David's answer was, I don't know, he inquired of the Lord because he knew that God knew. And in 1st and 2nd Samuel, there's quite a few situations there where David did exactly that. And the first time we read of it is in 1 Samuel 22. In 1 Samuel 22, David had the prophet Gad speaking into his life. And Gad would tell David what God had said. And later on in that same chapter, there's a priest called Ahimelech. And he is finding out from God and speaking into David's life on behalf of David. Okay? So David had Gad the prophet and Ahimelech the priest who were hearing from God and speaking into his life. But Saul gets angry, and he has Ahimelech, the priest, and 84 other priests killed because Saul heard that David was getting advice from Ahimelech. Ahimelech was working with David. Saul got mad, killed Ahimelech, killed 84 other priests as well. And when David hears about it, he is devastated, and he feels responsible for those 85 people for their death. And in the very next chapter, 1 Samuel 23, we first read, David inquired of the Lord. And there was a problem. The Philistines, they were the neighbouring nation, and they kept attacking. But it tells us that David inquired of the Lord, do I attack the Philistines or not? And God tells him, yes, go. But David's men are used to having a prophet or a priest do this, make decisions like this on their behalf. And they were a bit hesitant, understandably so. They had some serious concern because the numbers were stacked against them. And so to help alleviate their fears, David inquires of the Lord again. And he says to the Lord, are you sure, basically? My men are not so sure. God, are you sure? And God reiterates his initial statement and he adds, and David, you will win. A few chapters further on, in chapter 30, 1 Samuel 30, verse 8, David is away fighting and his own hometown is attacked and his family and the families of all the men that are fighting with him are taken captive by the Amalekites. And they come back home and obviously they are distraught, they are exhausted and they're weeping. And the men turn on David and they want to kill him in their grief because they see him as being the one who is responsible for them losing their families. And interestingly, Ahimelech, the priest that got killed, his one remaining son, Abiathar, is the priest. But David inquires of the Lord himself. And he asks God, do I go after these people who have ransacked our home and our city, and will I win? And God gives them the go-ahead. And again, with the assurance that they will be successful, David and his men chase after the Amalekites who have taken their wives and their children. And the operation couldn't have gone any better. And David and his men recover everything that was taken, their wives and their children, nobody was killed, and they all come back to Ziklag to rebuild their city and their homes. The situation then changes, okay? And Saul dies in battle, and David has now become king. And I love it that he continues to inquire of the Lord himself, and he doesn't let the title of king go to his head. So in 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse 1, David inquires of the Lord about a very ordinary thing. There's no battle involved here. There's no lives at stake. And David says to God, David inquires of the Lord, which city should I live in? And God answers him and he says, go and live in Hebron. And David firmly establishes himself in Hebron as king over Judah, where the people live in peace for more than 7 years before the Philistines become aggressive again. And David reverts to his tried and true habit of inquiring of the Lord. In 2 Samuel 5, verse 19, David asks God, shall I fight the Philistines? And will I win? And God replies, go for it. You will win. And the battle is fought and won. But the Philistines come at them again. And instead of being tempted to use yesterday's guidance for today's problem, David once again inquires of the Lord and he receives fresh guidance and a new battle plan. And in 2 Samuel 5 verse 23, David inquires of the Lord and says, what's the battle plan? And he receives an ambush plan that's all very different, and it utilizes nature, and it all works perfectly because David inquired of the Lord. In every one of those accounts where we read that word inquired, it's a Hebrew word, sha'al. And it means to ask, to request, to consult. It's all about wanting information. Just give me the answer. David wanted to know what to do, so he sha'aled God. And it worked wonders for him. He has 100% strike rate in battle. There is peace. All is good in Judah where David is king. And that makes what happens next a real puzzle and a warning for us. Because from here on, David stopped sha'aling God. And I can't help but wonder, what would have been the outcome if only David had kept this practice up and continued to inquire of the Lord? And just a few chapters later, in 2 Samuel chapter 11, we come to the story of Bathsheba. And it's sad that we don't read anywhere in this story that David inquired of the Lord. If only we could insert a verse in between the story. Just a short verse that says, David inquired of the Lord. David sha'aled the Lord. If we could put that in between verses 2 and 3 in 2 Samuel chapter 11, maybe the Bathsheba incident and its resulting ripples out of murder and deceit, maybe they wouldn't have happened. If David is looking over the balcony and he sees this beautiful woman and in his heart he's feeling some temptation, if we read David inquired of the Lord what to do, I'm sure God would have given him a strategy of what to do, but he didn't. And David just went with what his body and his desires were telling him. Again, just 2 chapters further on, in 2 Samuel 13, a family incident could have been averted if only David had inquired of the Lord. If we could insert that short verse again in between verses 6 and 7 of chapter 13, maybe Tamar, David's daughter, would have been kept safe. She would not have been raped and shunned for the rest of her life if David had inquired of the Lord. But he didn't. And in that same chapter, there's 2 more family incidents that are ripples out from that rape of Tamar that needed David to be a strong fatherly figure in his family. But sadly, that phrase, David inquired of the Lord, it's missing. And if only we could insert that short statement and verse in between verses 21 and 22, or in between verses 26 and 27, then maybe that lifelong rift between Absalom and Amnon would have been repaired. And maybe the request for permission for Amnon to attend Absalom's party would have been seen for what it was, and another murder would have been avoided. 7 years pass. David is not inquiring of the Lord. Absalom has been estranged from his father. They've had no contact because of the injustice around Tamar's rape and the resulting ripples out from that. And Absalom's discontent starts to show itself, and he subtly is stealing away the hearts of the people of Israel from their loyalty to their king, his father. And David hears a messenger that comes to David and tells him that Absalom is planning a revolt. And there is silence. Sadly, David doesn't inquire of the Lord. And in the events of 2 Samuel 15, verses 13 and 14, if David had inquired of the Lord there, maybe the decision for him to flee from his palace would not have been made, and maybe God would have provided a different solution other than the one that resulted in Absalom now being murdered. It's easy for us to criticize David for not continuing to inquire of the Lord. But I suspect a lot of us are exactly the same. I know I am. Things change, however, and by the time we get to 2 Samuel 21, a 3-year famine has happened. It's stressing David out, and he returns, yay, to his habit of inquiring of the Lord. But this time, it's different. His inquiring has changed. David is again seeking the Lord, but the focus now, he wants to seek the presence of the Lord, or the face of God. And the Hebrew word changes. So the previous examples we've talked about, the word is sha'al, and it means to ask, to want information, to get answers. Now, the word inquired used here in the Hebrew is the word barkash, and it means to search out in worship or in prayer, to strive after, to beg and beseech and desire. And you can see there's a difference here. David was done with just getting answers to his problems. Now he wants God, God himself, only God. And David is seeking the face of God. And his inquiring of the Lord goes much deeper. It goes past the problem. It goes past the immediate thing that is in front of him. And this is a heart inquiring, much deeper. He's got to the place where even if the problem doesn't get solved, as long as David knows that God is with him in the problem, he's okay with that. Wow, what a difference. And interestingly, by the next chapter, David is singing this long song of praise to God that's all about the security that he finds in God. It says, "The Lord is my rock, my fortress, my deliverer. My God is my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield, the horn of my salvation. He is my stronghold, my refuge, my saviour, and from violent people you save me." This is the song that David sings to God after he has been bokoshing God. So from this point on, David has stopped sha'aling God, and now he is bokoshing God. He is inquiring of God, but it's different. And I have been sha'aling God. I've been asking God for information about going back to Cambodia. When should I go? How will I get there? And then one night, as I lay in my bed not sleeping, I decided I should practice what I preach. And I spent some time that night bokoshing God. God, I don't need answers. I need you. And I felt him say to me, "Sue, you are exactly where I want you to be. You are on my dropped pin, exactly where I want you to be. And I just need you to take the next step that's in front of you." And those came from Exodus chapter 14. And God said, "Trust me, Sue, and trust my timing." And I got to the place where I was able to say, "Okay, God, I'm good with that. I trust you, and I trust your timing." I don't know what it is for you that you are wanting answers from God. And, you know, a lot of times the Bible tells us you don't have because you don't ask. And so there is a place for sha'al and there is a place for bokosh. We can sha'al God and ask him to give me answers for this, help me with decisions. But the bigger, deeper, better place to be is for us to bokosh God. God, I need you. I need your presence with me. I need you in my life. And when that happens, I know that whatever is the problem around me, whatever is the thing I'm needing information for, God, I know you with me, that's the answer to my problem. That's the answer to my issue. So sha'al is good. Bokosh is better. Don't ever stop inquiring of the Lord. Not ever. That's what God's been saying to me. What's he saying to you?